You hurt by the memory of that?
I was furious.
At 81 years old, Bette Davis could barely hide her dislike for Errol Flynn. The tension between these two Hollywood stars ran much deeper than anyone realized. Their story involves billing wars, a violent slap that made Flynn sick, and shocking revelations about who was really the better actor. Hollywood in the 1930s was like a battlefield dressed up as a dream factory. Every star wanted their name in bright lights, and the competition was fierce. Bette Davis stood at the center of it all, intense, sharp-tongued, and determined to reach the top through pure talent. She didn't rely on beauty or charm like others. She simply outworked everyone around her. Errol Flynn was completely different. He was Warner Brothers' golden boy, a charming leading man whose good looks were enough to make audiences forgive his mistakes, forgotten lines, or late arrivals to set. He was the face of the studio, while Davis represented the craft of acting. Putting these two together was asking for trouble. When Warner Brothers paired them in The Sisters in 1938, studio executives thought it was brilliant. Flynn brought box office success, while Davis brought awards and prestige. But problems started immediately. Davis saw herself as a serious actress forced to babysit what she considered a reckless playboy. Flynn didn't appreciate being looked down on. He knew women loved him, and that the studio would do anything to keep him happy. In his mind, Davis's cold behavior was just bitterness disguised as professionalism. These weren't just two actors working together. It was two completely different worlds colliding. Flynn came alive when the cameras rolled, but treated preparation like a waste of time. Davis lived for preparation, rehearsing endlessly and perfecting every emotion until it was perfect. The gap between them was obvious, and both were too proud to pretend otherwise. Off the set, their personalities clashed even more. Davis had no patience for what she called Flynn's irresponsible charm. She saw him as careless, arrogant, and sometimes disgusting. Flynn mocked her intensity in return, calling her overly serious, humorless, and prissy. Every conversation turned into sharp comments and hidden insults. For Davis, this wasn't just annoyance, it was complete contempt. For Flynn, it was wounded pride. The film crew noticed right away. Their tension was so obvious that even the extras whispered about it between takes. Some people swore Davis's eyes burned holes through Flynn whenever he missed his cue. Others claimed Flynn said nasty things about her the moment she left the room. This wasn't just acting. It was war disguised as romance on the silver screen. Warner Brothers refused to separate them because conflict sells tickets. Executives knew the electricity between these two stars, whether from attraction or hatred, would keep audiences interested. But no one expected how far things would go once Davis decided she couldn't just act out her anger anymore. If there was one thing Bette Davis hated more than sloppy acting, it was being underestimated. She had already won an Academy Award by the time she starred with Flynn, and she was becoming Warner Brothers' most respected actress. But in Hollywood, respect didn't always mean power. That power was measured by billing, whose name appeared first in those glowing letters above the movie title. When Davis discovered Flynn had been given top billing in The Sisters, she was furious. To the public, this might seem petty, but in the harsh studio system, billing wasn't just about ego. It represented status, money, and legacy. Davis had carried entire films with her performances, while Flynn, in her view, just coasted on his good looks. She believed The Sisters was her film, her story, her showcase. Yet, when the posters went up, Flynn's name shone brighter. To Davis, this was a pure insult. She saw it as proof that Warner Brothers valued Flynn's sex appeal over her artistry. The studio had done this before, banking on Flynn's popularity with audiences, especially women, to guarantee ticket sales. Davis knew the truth. Flynn might bring people into theaters, but she was the one who made films unforgettable. Still, the studio treated her as the actress, while Flynn was the star. This divide ate at her. What made things worse was Flynn's reaction. He didn't openly gloat, but he didn't hide his smugness either. Flynn was smart enough to know Davis's pride had been wounded, and some say he enjoyed watching her struggle. One insider claimed Flynn once winked at Davis during production meetings, saying, "Don't worry, darling, they'll spell your name right." To Davis, this wasn't a joke. It was a taunt. The resentment spilled into their performances. Davis couldn't look at Flynn without thinking of the injustice. She began channeling that bitterness into her character, delivering lines with simmering tension that made their scenes electric. Flynn, always good at improvising, leaned into it too, though his relaxed energy clashed with her tightly wound delivery. The result was scenes that felt raw and almost too real, like the characters themselves were battling for control. Behind the scenes, Davis lobbied the studio hard to be treated as the rightful lead. She complained to executives, demanded respect, and made it clear she wouldn't be pushed around by some pretty boy with a sword collection. But Warner Brothers didn't budge. Flynn was their golden goose, and Davis's outrage was brushed off as temperamental behavior. The word temperamental was Hollywood's coded way of dismissing powerful women, and the more she was dismissed, the more Davis seethed. She began looking for ways to assert control on set, even if it meant making Flynn uncomfortable. If the studio wouldn't give her top billing, she'd find her own way to remind Flynn and everyone else who was really in charge. That reminder came in the most shocking way possible, a single slap across Flynn's face that would go down in Hollywood history. The tension between Bette Davis and Errol Flynn finally exploded in one unforgettable moment. During a heated rehearsal, Davis's character was supposed to slap Flynn. Normally, actors fake this, an angled swing, a snap of the wrist, with the sound added later. But Davis wasn't in the mood to fake anything. Instead, she took off her gloves, let her diamond ring catch the stage lights, and swung with every ounce of pent-up rage she'd been holding back. The crack echoed through the set. Flynn staggered, clutching his face, with the red mark of her ring already forming. Crew members froze. This wasn't acting. It was assault delivered in front of everyone. Flynn tried to brush it off with false bravado. He grinned through clenched teeth, made a sarcastic comment about Davis's right hook, and walked off like nothing had happened. But the moment he turned the corner, witnesses said his face went pale. He rushed to his dressing room and threw up. That wasn't just pain. It was humiliation. For a man whose entire reputation rested on being the dashing, invincible hero, being publicly hit by a co-star was humiliation he couldn't easily shake. What made it worse was Davis's expression after the slap. She didn't look guilty. She looked satisfied. For her, it was justice. Flynn had stolen billing, mocked her craft, and now he had paid a price in front of the very people who kept dismissing her complaints. She hadn't just slapped Errol Flynn. She had slapped Warner Brothers itself. But the aftermath wasn't as clean as she hoped. Flynn didn't take the humiliation quietly. He went around the set complaining to anyone who would listen, calling Davis vicious, unhinged, and even dangerous. He threatened to walk off the production entirely. The studio scrambled to calm him down, though privately executives were split. Some thought Davis had gone too far. Others thought the tension was pure gold for the film, making their on-screen fights look real. For Davis, the incident only cemented her hatred. Flynn represented everything wrong with the Hollywood system, men coasting on looks while women had to bleed for recognition. In her eyes, he deserved that slap, and maybe more. She even joked later that if she hadn't been wearing a ring, she would have done it again just to see him flinch. As much as Flynn seethed, he didn't press the issue. Walking away from the movie would have damaged his golden boy image, so he swallowed his pride, returned to the set, and tried to carry on. But the damage was permanent. From that day forward, every interaction between Davis and Flynn was layered with poison. She saw him as a fraud. He saw her as a tyrant. Neither could hide it. The real problem went deeper than the slap. It was how Bette Davis and Errol Flynn approached acting itself. Davis was an obsessive perfectionist who believed every role demanded total commitment. If it meant shaving her hairline to look harsher on camera, she did it. If it meant rehearsing a scene for days until every pause and glance landed perfectly, she demanded it. She lived and breathed the work. Flynn treated acting like a game. To him, it wasn't art, it was adventure. He was famous for showing up late, sometimes hungover, often unprepared. His philosophy was simple. The camera loved him, audiences adored him, and charisma couldn't be rehearsed. While Davis tore apart scripts line by line, Flynn skimmed through them, cracking jokes and charming the crew. This wasn't just a personality difference. It was a collision course. Davis would spend hours drilling scenes only to watch Flynn waltz in, toss off his lines, and still get applause. To her, it was disgusting. She felt it cheapened the craft, turning years of training and discipline into a circus act. Flynn thought Davis was sucking the joy out of acting. He once said to a friend that working with her felt like being chained to a school teacher. The war between Bette Davis and Errol Flynn didn't stay on set. It spread through Hollywood's gossip columns like wildfire. People wondered if Davis's hatred of Flynn was just professional, or if there was something more personal underneath. Some claimed Davis had once been interested in Flynn before filming began. He was, after all, Warner Brothers' ultimate playboy, tall, devastatingly handsome, and dripping with charm. But if there ever was a spark, it died quickly. Davis supposedly found his behavior revolting. The drinking, the bragging, the constant affairs. He was the type of man who lived in scandal, and she was the type of woman who despised losing control. To her, Flynn wasn't just reckless, he was disgusting. Others suggested jealousy was at the root. Flynn was paid far more than Davis, even though she had already proven herself with awards and critical acclaim. Hollywood rewarded him for being a heartthrob, while forcing Davis to fight for every scrap of respect. Behind closed doors, she seethed that Flynn's recklessness was treated as charm, while her discipline was dismissed as being difficult. The confession came years later and shocked even those who knew Davis best. For years, she had carried her contempt for Flynn like a badge of honor. She mocked him openly, dismissed him as lightweight, and reminded anyone who would listen that working with him was one of her least pleasant Hollywood experiences. But time has a way of softening even the sharpest grudges. The turning point came when Davis watched The Sisters years later, away from the bitterness of set life. On screen, something clicked that she had never allowed herself to acknowledge before. Flynn wasn't just coasting, he was good, really good. His natural charm, the relaxed way he delivered lines, the effortless magnetism. Suddenly Davis saw what audiences had always seen. His performance had weight, and it balanced her intensity in a way no one else could have. The confession came in a conversation with her close friend Olivia de Havilland, another of Flynn's most famous co-stars. Davis admitted that she had been wrong about Flynn. He was brilliant. Coming from her, those words were monumental. Davis was notorious for her honesty and didn't hand out compliments lightly. If she said someone was brilliant, it meant she truly believed it. For Flynn, who had endured her disdain during filming, that validation came too late. He had already died, his legacy forever tied to both his scandalous lifestyle and his iconic roles. Why did Davis change her mind? Perhaps with distance, she realized her anger wasn't just about Flynn, it was about the Hollywood system that pitted them against each other. The feud between Bette Davis and Errol Flynn wasn't just two stars clashing. It was a mirror of old Hollywood itself. Davis embodied discipline, grit, and the endless fight women faced to be taken seriously. Flynn embodied charm, privilege, and a system that rewarded looks over hard work. Their war on set wasn't only personal, it exposed the cracks in the studio system. What makes their story still matter today is how familiar it feels. Even now, Hollywood wrestles with the same issues. Who gets credit, who gets paid more, and how talent is valued against image. Davis's disgust with Flynn wasn't just about him, it was about what he represented. And Flynn's resentment of Davis wasn't just about her, it was about the pressure of being the golden boy who had to deliver without ever being allowed to grow. In the end, their clash became legend. The slap, the billing fight, the rumors, all of it created a storm that made their movie unforgettable. And decades later, Davis's shocking reversal, admitting Flynn was brilliant, added the final twist that keeps the story alive. Hollywood thrives on conflict, both on screen and off. The battle between Davis and Flynn proves that sometimes the ugliest feuds create the most enduring legends.